Moin and Guten Tag! In the last video I showed you how to make an amazing no-knead bread in just 7 steps. After mastering that recipe, the logical next step is to take that recipe and make it even better. And this is what today's video is about. We will be incorporating delicious seeds into our no-knead bread. Let me show you exactly step by step. The process is very similar to the basic no-knead bread. I will not be going into that much detail in this video. I will be linking the video right here and also in the end, so you can just continue and enjoy watching this footage. On Thursday evening, I'm readying my sourdough starter. I want it to be nice and active on Friday morning. And for this, I always promote a 1:5:5 feeding pattern. That's 10 grams of starter, 50 grams of flour, and 50 grams of water. Then I proceed with readying the main dough. And for this, I'm just mixing flour and water and I'm stirring that for roughly 2 minutes. Now the amount of water that you should be using depends on your flour. In my case, I have roughly 15% protein. So in that case, I'm going to be using 70% based on the flour. That's 350 grams of water for 500 grams of flour. You need to adjust this depending on your flour. That's very important, else you might just get a flat pancake. And this is how my dough looks like in the morning. Great gluten network development overnight by just waiting. That's the autolysis. The most important ingredient, my sourdough starter, it doubled in size overnight. It looks very nice, healthy and active. And next up I'm adding my salt, that's 2% based on the flour, 10 grams in total, and then my sourdough starter, that's 100 grams, 20% based on the flour. Together with the starter and salt, it is time to incorporate your additions. In this case, I'm using black sesame seeds. I simply love the taste and the look in the final product. You could also be adding olives or cheese, pretty much anything. The only limitation is your creativity. If you add something that already has water, consider using slightly less water for your main dough. Then it is time to incorporate everything. Probably the only unlazy thing about this whole recipe. Shoot, I'm a really lazy German. For roughly 2 minutes, I'm stirring everything together. I want to make sure that the whole dough is nicely homogenized. We don't want areas to have more starter than other areas. And now comes the big trick. The one thing I want you to learn from my videos. The sample hack. After 2 minutes, I'm removing the dough and place it on my unfloured surface. Yes, resist the urge to use flour, else the next step is not going to work. We will be extracting a small dough sample and place it in another cylindric shaped container. I'll extract just enough to cover the tiny jar. This sample will show us when the dough is finished fermenting based on the size increase. Very, very simple. I marked this jar with a rubber band typically. Now, depending on your flour's protein, you will need to look at a different increase in size. That's a very important lesson. The more protein, the more your dough can be inflated. The less protein, the less. Trust me, mastering this will make you nail every sourdough bread from now on. In my case, I have around 15% protein flour, so I can easily go for a 70 to 110% size increase. Sample has been extracted, so now let's round up the dough. You can use a dough scraper or your hands. This only works because we do not have any flour on the surface, so that's really the trick. Then I'll take this dough and I like to place this in a glass bowl like this that I can easily flip over in the end. This is where our dough will be fermenting. Then it's just waiting until your sample reaches the desired size increase. So easy. That's what I love about this recipe. With watered hands, I'm removing the dough from the edges of the container. This helps unstick it. Now it's time to prepare the bannetons. Use a little bit of rice flour. I'm using a linen inside of the bannetons. That helps with making the dough non-stick. Afterwards, sprinkle your main dough with a little bit of flour. We don't want it to stick to the surface now when we flip it over. Same thing, better be safe than sorry. Let's also sprinkle our surface with some additional flour. And this is why I love this container. You can just flip it over like that. No need to pre-shape. Just like that, you can directly shape it. It just takes a little bit, and I always have a little bit of dough sticking, but that's totally okay. Next up, brush some additional flour below your dough, and I'm popping this super large bubble. Very satisfying. And next up, we need to shape our dough. And I'm just removing some of that excess flour in between because this helps with the dough sticking together. That's pretty much what you're trying to do. You're trying to glue the dough together. You want to use enough flour so the dough doesn't stick, but at the same time also not too much. I'm repeating the same process now from the other side. Actually, I'm using a little bit of water now to help the dough stick to itself. And this is already a very good looking dough, but it does not have enough structure yet. So I will be applying one additional shaping technique. I will roll the dough over just like that. And this is going to create a very, very nicely, tightly shaped dough. Of course, the tighter you shape the dough, the more you also even out your crumb. So it's also a little bit about finding the right balance. I remove some of the flour around it, and then I like to tighten up the dough even a little bit further using the dough scraper. Then I'm applying some water on top of the dough because this side that we see now is going to be the top side in the end. And then I'm placing it on a bed of sesame seeds. You could be using any other seeds, you could skip the seeds. I just love them for the visual look. And then with a gentle movement, I'm placing the dough in the Benetton where it's now going to start proofing. This is the proofing process. I screwed up a little bit here. I guess I could have added a few more seeds directly after shaping. At the same time, I also did not want to use too much water because I wanted to make sure that the bread does not stick to the Benetton. So I need to experiment a little bit more here. If you have some tips, please also share them in the comment section. I'm applying some additional in Benetton stitching. This just helps creating additional strength. Perfect for a no-knead bread recipe like this. Note the finger poke test, a great trick to check when your dough is done proofing. Unfortunately, it does not work with fridge-proofed doughs. We will proof the dough for an hour at room temperature and then overnight in the fridge. And then it's ready to be baked for the breakfast. Delicious breakfast. The dough was now at room temperature for roughly an hour. And let me show you the finger poke test one more time. You can see this still springs back, but relatively slowly. I will now be putting this into the fridge until tomorrow morning. In the morning, I'm just giving my dough a little bit of a semolina topping because I don't want it to stick to the Dutch oven. And I'm placing my dough now on the bottom preheated part of the Dutch oven. It's very hot. I'm just brushing off some additional flour and then I get started with scoring it. Lesson learned here in this case. I tried to give it a small, beautiful additional extra scoring, but that completely disappeared in the end. I'm also not 100% happy with the coverage of the sesame seeds on the top. So that's why I will be giving this dough an additional spritz, and then I'm just placing some additional sesame seeds on top. Maybe I should have improved the process at the start a little bit, but this definitely works. Yeah. Some nom nom nom, nice delicious additional sesame seeds. Then I'm closing my Dutch oven and I will be baking this bread for 25 minutes, lid closed, with a lot of steam at 230 degrees Celsius, and then another 20 minutes without the lid. This bread turned out much better than I expected, so mouth-watering, incredibly delicious. I wish I could send you a slice. That brings us to the end of this video. If you have a bread-related question, something goes wrong, then please drop a comment in the comment section. I'm there to help. Now, stay tuned for the next video in this series. I will be showing you how to make not one, but 2 no-knead bread recipes at the same time. And actually not just 2, it could also be 100, so time for you to open up your own bakery. Thanks for watching, and as always, may the gluten be with you.